Welcome to the YOL Work From Home Wellbeing Series. I'm Skylar Skikos. I'm co-founder of Local Framework. It's an investment and development firm focused on highly individualized hospitality projects, where we really focus on adding placemaking with programming. And one of our properties, Olima House in Point Reyes, we're in partnership with YOL on some upcoming workshops. So hopefully you both can join for that, and more info to come. But today, what I'm going to talk about really has nothing to do with that, and it's really not anything that I have any particular expertise in. Just some observations, some musings on my experience during this sheltering in place, and how I've been navigating that. So hopefully it's some value to you. But let's start with just a brief body scan. So I can just invite you to close your eyes. Let's get comfortable, and just start with an exhale, and then inhale to the count of 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 1, 2, 3, 4. Now exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. And inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, with your eyes closed, let's place your awareness at the crown of your head. Slowly move it down to your forehead, your third eye, your eyebrows, and your eyelids, down to your nose, to your cheekbones, out to your ears, down to your jawbone, into your lips, down to your chin, your throat, around to the nape of your neck, down to your shoulders, down to your shoulder blades, to your mid-back, to your sacrum, down to the back of your thighs, to your calves, down to your feet, now up to your shins, your knees, the front of your thighs, your hips, your navel, your solar plexus, up to your chest, your collarbone, out to your upper arms, down to your forearms, and now into your hands. I want you to take a moment. I want you to think of something, whatever comes to mind, of maybe something that it's time to let go of, that you're holding on to. And just think about where you feel that located in your body, and just observe it for a second and just hold for it. Now just imagine it being just released and coming out of your body, and just released into the ether, into the air. And just see it going. And just take one last breath. And then when you're ready, just open your eyes again. Okay. All right, well, maybe we're a little bit grounded to start here. I'd like to talk a bit about transitions today, and I think this is something that, at least for me, has been extremely relevant given the circumstances right now with what we've all been facing. It goes without saying, we're experiencing massive and sudden change and upheaval, and it's probably very uncomfortable. It certainly has been for me. it's been disruptive financially, or maybe it's work, maybe it's relationships, or just feeling almost like we're in exile or cooped up. It's just clearly wreaking a lot of havoc. And there's a quote that I read the other day that I thought was appropriate, that I'll start off with, by Mary Shelley. And she said, "Nothing is as painful to the human mind as a great and sudden change." And so it's certainly where I find myself, and perhaps you do as well. And, you know, there might be this sense of wanting to go back to where things were, or maybe it's just let's hurry up, let's get out of this, and let's move on to start again, to normalcy. But, you know, for better or worse, we are where we are, and we find ourselves here today, and we're in this time of change, and we really can't escape it. So all we can do is really just grapple with how to best navigate it and to manage it. Coincidentally, a few months ago, just before this all started, I read a book called Transitions by William Bridges. And I feel that this book is extremely relevant to what we're all facing today. And it's particularly been helpful for me to navigate it. And so I'd like to share a little bit about that book and some observations that I've had. The key summary, the key premise there is really differentiating between the notion of change, which is an external event, and transition, which is really the internal, the psychological process that you have to go through to navigate and to incorporate that change. And so often, you know, we have this tendency to focus on the external, the change, without really being mindful to that internal process, that psychological side that we have to go through. And so things change, but we haven't caught up, and we end up in a little bit of an uncomfortable state. And so Bridges talks about the process for this transition of how to manage and navigate that internal psychological transition. And, you know, really there's 3 steps to that. There's 3 parts, and it starts with the ending. So it starts with, what is it that was that it's time to let go of, that no longer is, which is why I wanted to start with that, with this session today, of that reflection of what it might be time to let go of. The next piece to that is, it's a period of loss and emptiness called the neutral zone. And then finally, there's the 3rd stage, which is the new beginning, when something else that takes its place ultimately emerges. So where do we find ourselves today? Well, we definitely had an abrupt ending, and I don't know about you, but I'm squarely in this neutral zone, this sort of static period of sheltering in place. But I think what's important to remember is that may be where we are from a change standpoint, but psychologically we might still be back where in the ending, and we may not have gone through the point of accepting and acknowledging that ending so that we can move forward. And so it kind of makes us stuck. We need to first go through and have that ending. That ending goes first, and it really, it's almost, there's almost kind of a spiritual element to it of letting go and surrendering. You just sort of release that into the air. The question is, you know, well, how do we do that? How do we have that letting go, that process? And, you know, Bridges, he talks about, traditionally societies have had rituals where there's a particular way to memorialize the ending and to proceed forward. And excuse me, we really don't have that with our society and our culture right now. And so we're kind of left on our own. So personally, I actually just created my own ritual to memorialize the ending, to give it a go here. And I won't get into the particulars of it, but I will admit it had involved some sage, possibly a Buddha bowl, and maybe a full moon out of it all. but you know, the particulars don't matter. It's really just more the ritual itself that you're doing. And personally, I think that's helped me in a lot of ways. There's a number of transitions and changes that I'm navigating, both from the work side, the financial implications of that, but also our living situation has changed. And there's also been some familial changes. So it's just like change upon change upon change right now. And at least for me, it's helped to sort of mentally acknowledge that ending and give it a little bit of closure, which has been really helpful to me. So then after that ending, we find ourselves in that neutral zone, and it's a weird place. It's a weird place because it's not clear what you do. There's not a clear process or sort of just checklist of things. And so you kind of wonder, you know, what's the point of it? What do we do here? And very often we try to just kind of power through or to the new beginning, excuse me, because we're anxious and we're antsy. And so we say, I can't wait for shelter in place to be over, for everything to start fresh again. But we have to be careful because we can't do that too soon, because this time in the neutral zone it's incredibly important. It's a period, it's not dead time, first of all. It's not a time that we're just going to kind of binge on Netflix, although there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the point. Really, it's a time to give ourselves some space to think and to reflect and to go inward. And again, if you parallel it with traditional societies, they often had this ritual of going into the wilderness, and somebody would go into it alone and sort of have this period of being out there in the wilderness alone to sort of navigate this time in between, this time of uncertainty. And we don't have that formally, and so it's really incumbent upon us to create that process or that ritual ourselves. And so I've been playing with a few things during this time to just kind of be mindful of that and navigate that. And so I'll share them just to see if they're of value. The first is a routine of going inward. And I do this really in the morning, first thing, starting with a meditation. And then I take my dog for a walk, who's snoring right now. I don't know if you can hear that at my feet. And then I follow it up with some journaling. And the point of that is really just to provide a little bit of grounding and a little bit of an anchor, and also a little bit of control and structure of a time when there's so much upheaval and so much that you don't control. That small routine of going inward kind of sets something that each day that I have that power to start from. And then the second part, you know, it's just giving myself some time really to just be and to just think and to let my mind wander. And I don't know about you all, but I think one of the things that's been frustrating about this time is my productivity has been terrible. And I really thought this was going to be some exceptional output stage, you know, like Shakespeare or Newton or whomever, where you have all of this that you're creating out of this period. And it hasn't been that. I've certainly struggled with that. But that's not the point of this time. That's not the point of being in this neutral zone. It's not about output. It's about giving yourself that time and that space to let go and to open up. So I find myself daydreaming a lot. You know, I'm looking right now out at some trees and oak trees, and this is my desk, and I do that so much during the day. It reminds me of, you know, second grade when you kind of used to do that in class. But it's just something to kind of just give yourself a little bit of space. And then the third is nature, and it's nature in two parts. It's being in nature, and it's learning from nature. The natural cycle, and I think there's a lot of parallels here. I mean, the cycle that we're talking about here is from being to loss to emptiness and then back to renewal. And so then you think about the seasonal cycle of being as summer, loss is fall, emptiness is winter, renewal is spring. And it's this loop, it's this cycle. And so our tendency is to want to skip the loss, skip the emptiness, go back to renewal or forward to renewal or back to beginning, to being, but you can't do that just as you wouldn't on the natural cycle. You follow that seasonal path here. There's an order and there's a logic to it. And then the second piece is just, really just the refreshing and nourishing and nurturing element of nature. It's just for me, it's been a very grounding and a very healing place to be as connected as I can to it, even if it's just looking out your window or whatever that may be, but just some sort of integration there. And then the last thing, and this is important that it's done without forcing it, but it's just opening up your mind to what it is that may want to emerge out of this, and just sort of being open to like, what might be waiting in the wings, what might evolve that gives this meaning, that gives this struggle, this transition, something that there's a meaning and a purpose out of this, and just kind of open yourself up to that without focusing too heavily on that. So that brings us to the third part, which is the new beginning. So after you've gone through the ending, you've let go, you've struggled through this neutral zone, this uncomfortable, gooey, weird place of uncertainty. Eventually, there is this piece that emerges, and again, you have to be open to it and you have to be ready for it. But the basic idea is, what is that next path that might be there that required the ending of what was in its way, required you to let go of that in order for it to open up and to emerge this new path to explore. And that'll eventually be clear, but we have to give ourselves that time for that to materialize and to come through. And, just a word of caution, I think that's actually one of the big concerns that maybe people weren't talking about here as much is the reacclimation period and how challenging that might be. We're all so eager to get out of this weird state of sheltering in place and wanting to get to the other side. But there's a good possibility that some of us might not be ready when that opens up. We might still be in our neutral zone. We might still be grappling with things. And so as that happens, just as best as we can to really be mindful of that and give ourselves the time as we can to emerge back into it on our time, not on the time that's created for that. So with all that said, just some things that I've been reflecting on or kind of wondering about that might, for me personally, be emerging as my new beginning. It's really, I'm focused on and fascinated with this notion of regeneration. And you might be familiar with regenerative agriculture. And that's basically, it's a farming technique. It's rooted in, excuse the pun, creating good soil. The soil is the basis of it all. And so you create this holistic, interdependent ecosystem that's very diverse. And all of that comes in and enriches the soil. And so out of that, you get better output, you get greater resilience, you get carbon sequestration, and you get this continual renewal over and over again. And I love this as a metaphor for people and place. And, really it's this question, which the great philosopher Tom Morris says, how can we as people be good soil? And so it's this perspective of, how can we make ourselves good soil? How can we make places that are good soil? And what I mean by that is that they have a holistic perspective. They're interdependent in their ecosystem. And they help to provide positive transformation for ourselves and for the community. And so in essence, you're going from independent to interdependent. You're going from siloed to interconnected. You're going from single use to multi-use, diverse and regenerative. So you're creating this closed loop system out of it all, and you're recognizing the interconnection there. So I'm really curious how we can catalyze this notion of regenerative community across the people, place, and the environment going forward. And so it's sort of that new beginning that's there, that I'm just sort of open to and seeing how that plays out and how that evolves from here. There's an interesting thought experiment that may be helpful during this time just to consider, and this is something that you may want to take some time with, but the idea is, think of yourself as being 90 years old and you're looking back at this time with the benefit of hindsight. And so from that vantage point, from that perspective of time and seeing the whole picture, start to ask yourself some questions. You know, what's the best course of action that I can take during this time, having looked back at that? Was it a time to let go of something and define that new path? What was it that with this time was meant for you to do? And then also, are you pleased with how you use this time, with how things turned out? Or is there something that you missed? So it's just, maybe just spend some time, sort of dive into this thought experience with that. So just to summarize it up, again, we all know we're in a massive, massive period of change. But let's just be very mindful of the internal, the psychological transition that we're experiencing and how important that is, and to shepherd that through as best we can so that we can emerge for this new beginning to come and we can be ready. We got to let go of the ending first. We need to let go and surrender. And we need to embrace this uncomfortable, this awkward, gooey, or just unpleasant time of the neutral zone, because it really does serve a purpose. And then just being open to what might emerge, what's waiting there in the wings in the appropriate time. So in closing, I have a few questions that I invite you to consider during this time. That may help you navigate it and just maybe interesting things to reflect on. So the first is, what is it time to let go of in my life right now? What is it time to let go of in my life right now? The second is, how can I give myself the time and the space to go inward and embrace the neutral zone? How can I give myself the time and the space to go inward and embrace the neutral zone? The third is, what is standing backstage in the wings of my life, waiting to make its entrance? What is standing backstage in the wings of my life, waiting to make its entrance? And then lastly, how can I be good soil? How can I be good soil to foster regeneration and positive transformation, both personally and for my community? And then I want to end with a quote that I think, I find relevant by Erich Fromm, the psychologist. And he says, "Uncertainty is the very condition to impel man to unfold his powers." So thank you all for that, and happy to open up with any questions. All right, well, Crystal, be sure to join us tomorrow for another session with Jason Gant on balance.
I have a question for you, Skylar. When you were speaking about making space for the thing that is becoming, I'm curious what that looks like. Like, how is that different than like making space to let go of something, or just listening to nature and like being receptive? What, without thinking about it, what does making that space feel like?
What does it feel like? Well, for me, and this is all personally, I think it feels very uncomfortable. I don't know that it's different than, because it's, you're letting go of something that's blocking that opening, that space that's there. So there's something that's in your life that's taking up what your time and your focus is. So first you have to clear that out. You have to let that go. And then there's this period where, instead of just jumping into the next thing, you kind of, it's like you're going into this wilderness, you're exploring, you're reflecting, you're diving into your subconscious of what it is that wants to come about, so that really anchors in and connects first before it comes about. So for me, it's total uncertainty. There might be just kind of little clues or indications of things that you find interesting, things you're reading, or quotes that you hear, or thoughts that you have in your head, or memories, or whatever it may be. But it's totally sort of non-linear path of experience and of going about that. And some of it's just sort of, you know, just observing too. I mean, just sitting out in so it's not structured in the sense of, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to come with an output. It's much more messy of, I'm going to give myself the time, but time in which I'm aware, not time in which I'm, you know, reading social media or doing whatever, but just time where I'm sort of, I'm a captive audience to have things come in.
Like a state of receptivity.
Exactly.
So different than like the engineering design process,
it's the opposite, right?
The coach mediated, what are my goals? What am I going to achieve?
Right. Exactly. It's much more of just sort of giving yourself some time to to explore. It's almost like play. It's almost like when you're a little kid and, you know, you're just kind of, you're playing with this and you're playing with that, and then you come up with some sort of combination or whatever. It's just, it's intentionally unstructured, but in a way where it's enriching, and it helps you to recharge there, as opposed to it being so rigid that it blocks out any other possibilities to it, you know, because if there's so much structure, then you're sort of blocking out what could be.
I love this topic. I think of it as any movement is good movement, right? It's progress, and it doesn't have to reach a result. It's like a tree growing a branch. It might not go up, it might go out, it might go down to the ground. I've been working through this process. It's all very, very timely and on point for me. So I like to think about it that way. And I think about the question about space as when I'm exploring a feeling, I try to do not a full-on body scan, but like really pay attention to my physiological responses to certain feelings, and that helps me decide if I want to go deeper in that direction and allow myself to feel whatever feeling it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So trained to find a happy space or find a silver lining.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we don't allow ourselves to move in whatever direction we need to be able to release and move into that neutral zone.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm going to talk quickly because you could hear there's construction happening again. So is that too loud for you guys, or?
No, it's fine.
I've been sort of meandering myself and trying to consciously not beat myself up for, as you said, Skylar, for wasting time as I would normally what I would normally think of as wasting time, but I find myself gravitating towards things that are helping me heal, helping me get through the process, things that are comforting, connecting with old friends that I haven't, you know, some of whom I haven't spoken to in over 20 years, listening to a lot of music. I'm part of this other sort of project, which will be cool, which has to do with one of my passions, music, and has an aspect of giving back to the community, and I'm getting great sort of value and pleasure from working with a bunch of people I've never worked with and doing something good and you know, doing something that's related to one of my passions in life. And so it's all self-care, and I think that's really important. And I've been sort of promoting that to people in my family and who are not taking care of themselves and not engaging in things that will help them get through these dark times. So that's sort of been a great lesson for me, and it's helped calm me, just really going back to the familiar. And at the same time, it's opened up some more space, you know, as you described, to allow me to kind of think about what's coming next and what that might mean for me and my family and my business and my friends and so forth. So But I think self-care is just a huge component of getting through this phase, of getting through this. So I'm gonna mute myself.
I agree. So great. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time and the audience.
Thank you, Skylar. What an unexpected delight to hear this message during the course of the day. I really
For
appreciate
sure.
it.
Appreciate
For
that.
sure.
Appreciate that.
Likewise, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Crystal,
All right.
nice to meet you.
Be well.
Bye, Skylar. Thanks.